This leads us to the practices of eXtreme programming. eXtreme programming has two main sets of practices. The first one is the primary set of practices, and the other is the corollary practices. So, the idea is to first get used to the primary practices and put them in place and actually practice on them, and then start using the corollary practices. What are the practices? Practices are basically related to the context where you're in. So it depends on the team, it depends on the project, it depends on the people. If you're stating a practice, you usually are saying that you comply with all the rules that practice announces. So the idea is you are at a specific point and you want to achieve something. So you need to put a practice in place so that you can go from a starting point up until the ending point. Applying a practice in XP is a choice. You don't actually have to apply practices. But if you do, the suggestion is to apply one practice, see the improvement that practice brings to the team and to the work, apply a compound, choose other practices, and apply those other practices to see a dramatic improvement. Because all the practices that we will be speaking about are practices that were proposed to work very well together. First, let's take a look at how XP actually works. So you can see a compound amount of circles in the figure, and you can actually see that each cycle, depicted here as a circle, is labeled with a time name. So we have quarterly cycles, we have weekly cycles, we have daily cycles. And you have inside the daily cycles a team of developers that actually sign up for stories and actually write code. So, what happens on a quarterly base on XP? Quarterly cycles are the largest amount of planning that is done and conducted in an eXtreme programming team. So, you have the team. The team is always in an odd number of people because they have to work in pairs. And the idea is that on a quarterly basis, you ask the team, the entire team, to write, select, and estimate stories. So, what is a story? It's one of the primary practices that we will see in a short while. The idea is for that team to also look at all the features that are already available and working and accept them. So the team, that usually also includes the customer, works on the design of the software and on the acceptance of the software. And this is done on a quarterly basis. Inside each quarterly cycle, you can divide each quarter into weeks. So we also have weekly cycles. And since the beginning of the weekly cycle and the end of the weekly cycle and the next weekly cycle, a small set of the team selects and estimates the stories that they will be responsible to implement and also accepts working features. And they do this on a weekly basis. On a daily basis, each pair of the team signs up for a story. And remember that this implies the responsibility of the team. So each pair has to estimate the story, has to design the story, has to implement the story, and has to test the story. And the idea is that after being able to sign up for a story, the team writes the code that will provide the implementation of the story. When signing up the story, the pair has to start by writing the software test that will automatically test if the feature is already implemented or not. So, as you can see, the first time the software test is written, the feature isn't yet implemented because this is done in a sequential order, and by the time you write the test, you still haven't written the feature. So what happens is that the first time that you write the test will fail because no feature is available. Then you write the feature as a team or pair of programmers, and then you test. So if the test passes after you've written the feature, okay, you grab a new feature, you sign up for a new story. If the test still hasn't passed, you keep on writing the feature up until the moment where the test passes. And only after the test has passed is that you can actually say as a team that you have completed the story and then sign up for a new story. This happens on a daily basis, so multiple teams that are composed by pairs of programmers sign up for stories and write the code, and they do this several times a day. The same team on a weekly basis moves the pairs so that they don't get the same pairs of developers every time. So on a weekly basis, the pairs of programmers, of developers, are changed so that everyone gets a side of the code. This is what's called code ownership and is promoted by this practice. Okay. On a weekly basis, the new teams select and estimate stories and accept the working features, and then repeat this process on a quarterly basis. So this is the iterative and incremental process that is aligned with the practices that we will see regarding XP.